Kabaragani, church family. Woo woo. If you know the answer, if you know the principle for today, type it in the chat. Shout it out. If what I said is totally unfamiliar, that's okay. You're in the right place. Because we are a community that draws wisdom from many sacred traditions. In December, we have observed and looked at Bodhi Day, Hanukkah, winter solstice, Christmas, and now we are in the midst of celebrating Kwanzaa. Some of you might be saying, talking back to the screen, like Reverend Georgia just reminded us, what are you talking about celebrating? Do you know what's going on in the world? And I recognize that 2020 has been a year like none other. Some of us have suffered devastating loss. Loss of loved ones with no way to grieve. Loss of homes. I remembered as I was writing this about the California fires. Many homes lost. Loss of jobs. We've had a loss of communities, of work communities, school communities, church communities. Some of them closed temporarily and some of them gone forever. Our way of being has been interrupted. I felt a sense of loss myself in this community. Being a member here for almost 20 years, I've spent so much time with so many of you. I've been in your homes and you've been in mine. We've eaten together, partied together, laughed together, and cried together. But who knew that our last time together was going to be our last time together? Don't you think we would have partied a little bit more? We would have hugged a little bit more, laughed a little bit more. But for me, it was the blink of an eye, and gone were the weekly hugs. I was no longer able to hear the giggles of the little children when you go in the hallways in the back. And we miss seeing them every week on this stage. I miss the sweet, sweet sound of the CSA Gospel Choir. Thank God for our house band. And the weekly dilemma of which bathroom to use. But who knew that the last time I was able to jam with praise and worship was going to be the last time? Or that the last person I hugged on that last Sunday was the last person I was going to hug for a long, long time. More than once I've cried on my pillow, failing to make peace with the fact that we can no longer pray together, sing together, worship together, meditate together. I've often thought, does this building miss us as much as we miss being in it? And simultaneously coexisting in this year, many of us have prospered. I know that I have. New homes, new jobs, new cars, new partners, even new babies in 2020 because we're resilient. It's our nature. But 2020 did for many of us what no one or no thing has been able to do. Make us change. It came in like a giant alarm clock, demanding that we wake up, take notice, and take responsibility for what ails the planet. These Kwanzaa principles understand that they are communal in nature. That means it's not just about you. So when you start talking about self-determination and the right to go out without wearing a mask, it's not about you. Kwanzaa is about us. Kwanzaa is about we. So it asks, what am I willing to do for the betterment of my family? What am I willing to do? Am I willing to do what is necessary for the betterment of my community? Am I willing to do what is necessary for the betterment of the world? I'm grateful to be a part of a community that lets its light shine. Because with all the ups and downs of 2020, CSA has been constant. I'm so grateful for CSA, grateful for its teachings. So that means I get to talk about Kwanzaa because Kwanzaa is steeped in these principles that we teach here. That's the beauty of principles. You can't own them. They're universal, they're classic, they're timeless. They hold you down when things get hard, and they make the good things even better. Amen? So Kwanzaa was created by Dr. Malana Karinga and first celebrated in 1966. Since then, it's said that over 15 million people have observed Kwanzaa. Say this after me, 777, or type it in the chat. Kwanzaa is about 7 days, 7 symbols, and 7 principles. Come on up, Mignon. Mignon is going to support me. So the 7 days are December 26th to January 1st of every year. And we have the 7 symbols here on our Kwanzaa altar. We have the mat, and the mat is what all the other symbols are placed on. And we have the 7 candles. We have our crops represented here, as well as our corn. You will always find a unity cup and gifts. And the gifts are usually for the children or educational. There's also a flag here, but that is not a primary symbol. And so we are going to light the candles. A candle representative of the 7 principles called the Nguza Saba. These are the 7 guiding principles that people are asked to commit to and practice throughout the year. However, during Kwanzaa, 1 principle is lifted up and celebrated each day. They go in the same order every year. Day 1, the center candle, the black candle, is umoja, or unity. We light today's candle for day 2. Day 2 is Kujichagalia. Can you say that? Kujichagalia, for self-determination. Thank you, Minyo. Day 3 is Ujima. Ujima. Ujima, for collective work and responsibility. Day 4 is Ujima, for cooperative economics. Day 5 is Nia, also known as purpose. Day 6 is Kaumba, for creativity. And day 7 is Imani, for faith. The question, Habara Gani, is Swahili and is asking, what's the news? What's the principle of the day? So when you hear that, your appropriate response is to say the name of the principle for that day. So let's see if you were paying attention. Habara Gani. Yay, Kujichagalia, that's right. So I hope you attend. There's so much to know and love about Kwanzaa. I hope you attend today's celebration. And I think it's our 17th or 18th year. And I tell you, CSA is a constant in my life. And I am so grateful for all the people who stepped forward to make it happen yet again. We are so blessed. Today is the 2nd day, and we are looking at the principle of Kujichagalia, or self-determination. Each person has the right to determine one's own destiny. In the words of James Baldwin, the world is before you, and you need not take it or leave it as it was when you came in. This principle is broken up into 4 parts: to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves, instead of being defined, named, created, and spoken for by others. As I studied this principle, I discovered that through applying this 4-step process, you automatically create change. So if there's anything you want to change in January or starting today, just apply, rinse, and repeat. Apply, rinse, and repeat. So the first part of this principle is to define ourselves. So let me tell you a story. One day, a little boy goes to his grandfather. He's cute as can be. And he says, "Grandfather, why is it that every story that I hear about the lion always loses? Why is it?" And you know, those are little kids, right? Why? Why is it that whenever the lion meets the man, why does the lion have to lose? Grandfather, isn't the lion the most fierce creature to walk the land? Can't the lion take any animal or human being's flesh and just tear it right from its bones? Why? Why does the lion have to lose? And the grandfather says, it's going to be that way until the lion tells his own story. Have you ever found yourself in somebody else's story? Many of us have found ourselves in other people's story. Black and brown people have found ourselves in other people's stories. Indigenous people the world over have found themselves in other people's stories. Lesbian, gay, transgender, in other people's stories. Marginalized and oppressed in other people's stories. Have you ever found yourself in somebody else's story where the story didn't accurately reflect who you were or what you were about? The next time you find yourself in somebody else's story, go back to the basics of Kujichagalia. See, the principle of Kujichagalia brings forth equity and empowerment. To define oneself recognizes every person, every group, every culture, every tribe, every race has value. Kujichagalia means you have the right and the responsibility to not only have your story corrected, but it gives you the pen to write your own narrative and write your own story. See, many of us are living restricted lives in one way or another, bound by someone else's definition of who we are. But Kujichagalia urges you to wake up to your true identity and step into the truth of who you know yourself to be. Go back to the beginning. Anchor yourself in that presence of love and ask yourself, who am I? And listen for the highest authority. Some call it that still small voice, that inner knower that will proclaim that you are the I am, made in its image and likeness, creative genius with the power of the universe, operative at the very center of your being. It's imperative that you first define yourself, absent of anyone else's story. It's not about your bank account or your level of education or who you know or don't know. It's about your true nature, that you are an unlimited being, valuable, worthy. And when you discover who you are, from that point, all things are possible. Sacred texts ask, know ye not that ye are gods? Go back to the basics. Go back to who am I? Buckminster Fuller said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Write your own story. The next step in Kujichagalia is to name ourselves. You may ask, Reverend Brynde, what's in a name? If you think there's not much in a name, it must be because yours was never taken from you. It has been common practice to strip the enslaved of their heritage, of their history, of their culture, of their belongings, everything, including their name. Names are an important key to what a society values. Tanya Lapido, a multicultural concerns expert, reminds us that a name or an identity is a powerful thing. It represents how we perceive ourselves and how we want other people to perceive us. It is a descriptor that allows people to make quick judgments and assumptions about us. Other people may give us names like parents, our parents, and labels like society will, but an identity can only come from within. See, when you name yourself, no one has the power to stop you. Muhammad Ali knew this, a no-name boxer who started telling folks, I'm the greatest. And what did he do? He went on to become one of the world's most recognized champions in the ring and out. He became the people's champion. But before he was it, he named himself. I found out that your name and identity is not just who you are currently, but it's who you are called to be. Come on, because we have to clean up what we call ourselves. Jesus grew into Christ. Siddhartha grew into the Buddha. Saul and Paul, and ordinary Mary. Saul became Paul, and ordinary Mary became one of the most recognized names of women throughout the entire world. They called Grandma Moses old, but she didn't start painting until she was 78. In other people's story, they might call you sick or weak or lazy or whatever, but it doesn't matter what they call you. It only matters what you call yourself. The second step of Kujichagalia empowers you to tell your story, highlighting your values, your culture from your perspective. It allows us to get specific about who we are and what we are as a people, as a community. This community named itself the Center for Spiritual Awareness, a kind and caring community. So that self-determination, you find it at all levels. Step 3 of Kujichagalia is to create for ourselves. It doesn't say what we shall create, only that we shall. Yet, this step speaks of intentionality. It's not a mishmash creation, but one of thoughtfulness and fortitude. See, when you write your own story, you can bring forth miracles from that field of possibilities. You can do what people told you was impossible to do. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, "There is in this world no such force as the force of a person determined to rise. The human soul cannot be permanently chained. Self-determination is not taking no for an answer." There's a story in the Old Testament of a woman, and she went to the ruler. She comes knocking at the door seeking favor, only to be completely ignored. But without insult, she continues to knock and knock and knock until she is granted access. That is to what we must do. We must be persistent in our creation, not giving up the first, the second, or 50th time something doesn't happen for us. Armed with the truth of who we are, having defined and named ourselves, we press on as catalysts for change. Shirley Chisholm says, you don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. And that is what we're taught here. We're taught how to successfully implement ideas. Somebody said, your life is God's gift to you. What you do with your life is your gift to God. We share in the responsibility to discover, develop, and contribute the best of our talents, our gifts, and our skills to our families, and to grow and nurture and nourish our communities. Quincy Jones cast a vision when he said, imagine what a harmonious world could be if every single person, both young and old, shared a little of what he is good at. We must do for the we. Visionary Marcus Garvey said, let us with one determination create in our minds today the conditions of the next 50 years. We embrace intentionality and creativity in a way that our creation will care for our children's children, and as a community support generations yet to come. We must strategize, organize, and mobilize around plans that are designed to build the economic, spiritual, technological, intellectual, and social structures that our communities need. The fourth step to this principle is to speak up for yourselves. Just as everyone gets a pen, everyone gets a voice. Lisa Congdon says, your voice is your superpower. If I am to control my destiny, then my voice and my voice alone must be the North Star. Say that with me. If I am to control my destiny, then my voice and my voice alone must be the North Star. I have the right to tell others my thoughts and feelings, to ask for what I need and want, to advocate for myself, knowing that I am entitled and have every right to speak up for whatever is needed. Don't allow others to assume. When you begin to write your own story, don't think there won't be pushback. Don't think everyone is going to kindly acquiesce to your new way of being. But just know you have the authority, the power, and the right to advocate for yourself. You may be familiar with the story of Fred Kiramatsu. On Memorial Day in 1942, Fred was walking down a street in San Leandro, California, with his girlfriend when police arrested him on suspicion that he was Japanese. The military was rounding up every Japanese American and Japanese immigrant on the West Coast. Over 100,000 people, most of them American citizens, were being put into concentration camps. It's been called one of the worst civil liberties violation in American history. But Kuramatsu, a 23-year-old welder in Oakland, born in Oakland to Japanese immigrant parents, refused to comply with the order. His defiance led to a historic test of liberty and an infamous Supreme Court precedent that upheld his conviction and still looms over American law today. He married, had kids, moved back to California in 1949, and worked, although his job prospects were always limited by his criminal conviction. For decades, he didn't speak about this incident. His children learned about it in their high school history class. In 1981, almost 40 years later, a researcher uncovered evidence that the U.S. government had presented false information to the Supreme Court in his case. He returned to federal court seeking vindication. In 1983, a federal judge threw out his conviction. Kuramatsu became a civil rights activist, lobbying Congress to pass the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which gave compensation and an apology to former wartime detainees. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1988. Before his 2005 death, he filed a court brief supporting the rights of Guantanamo Bay detainees before the U.S. Supreme Court. And in 2010, California made his birthday, January 30th, Fred Kuramatsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. Susie Kasim reminds us we must speak up, stand up, and keep correcting the false perceptions. Stay true to your heart's view and keep chanting for peace and justice. Kujichagalia reminds us that it is our right, our responsibility, and our privilege to write our own story. And through using the four-step process, defining ourselves, naming ourselves, creating for ourselves, and speaking for ourselves, we can create a more beautiful world for ourselves and our community. Amen? So let's just take this moment to turn within and stay in this energy of Kujichagalia, just letting it run through us, knowing that it's just another name for God. That this energy is everywhere present. As we say, the strength of God is ours to use. Giving thanks for this and so much more. We let it be, and so it is.